Welcome to the chapel of Robinson College and to this, our service for the Commemoration of Benefactors. Today we give thanks for the founding of this college and we recall with gratitude the generosity of our founder, all other benefactors, and all by whose work and care this college has been established and sustained as a place of education, learning, research and religion. On this, the anniversary of the dedication of our chapel, we also celebrate its role in the life of the college as an ecumenical foundation that seeks to embrace all Christian traditions and to welcome, affirm and collaborate with people of all faiths. So, let us keep silence and remember God in whose presence we are gathered. Almighty God, as we celebrate the founding of our college and chapel, the memory of our benefactors, and all those who have given themselves to the ministry of this chapel community, we thank you for the many blessings upon those who work and worship here. I'm delighted to say that our guest speaker today is the Rt Revd Stephen Conway, the Bishop of Ely. We begin our service with a portion of scripture taken from the apocryphal writings of the Old Testament, read by our warden.
Let us now praise famous men, and our fathers that begat us. The Lord hath wrought great glory by them, through his great power from the beginning. Such as did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel by their understanding and declaring prophecies. Leaders of the people by their counsels, and by their knowledge of learning meet for the people, wise and eloquent are their instructions. Such as found out musical tunes and recited verses in writing. Rich men, furnished with ability, living peaceably in their habitations. All these were honoured in their generations, and were the glory of their times. There be of them that have left name behind them, that their praises might be reported. And some there be which have no memorial, who are perished as though they had never been, and are become as though they had never been born, and their children after them. But these were merciful men, whose righteousness hath not been forgotten. With their seed shall continually remain a good inheritance, and their children are within the covenant. Their seed standeth fast, and their children for their sakes. Their seed shall remain for ever, and their glory shall not be blotted out. Their bodies are buried in peace, but their name liveth for evermore. The people will tell of their wisdom, and the congregation will show forth their praise.
As we gather in Christian worship, we do so to commemorate those whose generosity to the college has arisen from a variety of beliefs, convictions, and values. We remember with gratitude Sir David Robinson, by whose generosity the college was founded. We remember those who've given to the college because, having worked and studied here, they wish to give something back. Let us pause to reflect on the role we play in the life of the college and the impact of the college on our identity. We affirm those who support the college because of their belief in the importance of education and collegiate life. Let us pause to reflect on the privilege and the responsibilities that come with learning and teaching in such an environment. We think of those who give to the college because their personal convictions have compelled them to make a positive contribution to the world we share. Let us pause to reflect on our place in the world in the time that is entrusted to us. We acknowledge the faithful service given to the college by staff, fellows and students throughout the history of the college. Let us pause to appreciate the communal nature of our college life. We call to mind the benefactions made by those who have sought to commemorate former members. Let us pause to reflect on the deep and lasting influence our college life has had upon members past and present, and in turn, on the world at large. As we also commemorate the founding of this chapel, we celebrate the ecumenical spirit it embodies, the inclusivity it seeks to express, and the multi-faith openness this community seeks to foster. Today, we celebrate the generosity of individuals with different faiths and convictions, whose commitment has helped to shape the character and enrich the life of Robinson College.
Come to him, a living stone, though rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For it stands in Scripture, "See, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone, chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. To you then who believe, he is precious, but for those who do not believe, the stone that the builders rejected has become the very head of the corner, and a stone that makes them stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the word, as they were destined to do. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvellous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
Bishop Stephen, a very warm welcome to this digital version of Robinson College Chapel, and in particular to our Commemoration of Benefactors service.
Thank you, Simon. It's very good to be here with you.
Could we begin by, many people watching this will know very little about what bishops do beyond the caricatures that people have received. So bishops live in palaces and excommunicate apostates and burn heretics, and presumably those things are not on your job description.
They're not. I did, a while ago, visit a primary school, well, in fact, an infant school, where the children had been working a long time on what they thought a bishop was for. And they decided that a bishop lived in palaces and his job was to marry princes to princesses. I have to say that that hasn't occurred in my 15 years as a bishop so far. Primarily, what we're called to do within the Christian church and in the tradition of the church, to be successors of the apostles, to be people who are leaders in the mission of the church, in seeking to share the gospel of Jesus Christ as broadly and widely and deeply as we can, and to be doing that with other clergy. So I have a particular responsibility, to care for other clergy. So I'm a vicar to the vicars is a very important part of my role too. And I have a geographical base of Cambridgeshire and West Norfolk as the Diocese of Ely, and there are 325 churches in every community across the county and the county and a bit. And I'm responsible for the well-being of all of those churches and their ministers and the lay people. But also, we're called to be servants of the poor. And I think Pope Francis, when he was inaugurated, said that the church needed to be a poor church for the poor. And of course, as the established church, we have to work hard at that. But you know, I'm also overseeing projects where in communities where we work in partnership with others in other denominations in running food banks and anti-debt projects and so on. Trying to work with, and of course we have 85 schools. Some of those in the poorest parts of both Cambridge city and out in the countryside. So there's quite a lot to be engaged with, but all of that is, derives from one's sense of vocation, calling and vocation, and called by the church, this responsibility. This is the job I have is you can't apply for. You have to be chosen for it. It came as a great surprise when I got a letter from the Prime Minister to say, would you be prepared to come to Ely? And of course, the thing is, the Prime Minister asks you first, because if the Queen offered me the role and I then said no, that would be treason.
Right.
So we sought to avoid that. And as a bishop in the established church, it means also that I'm one of those who sits as a Lord Spiritual in the House of Lords. And I've sat in the House of Lords since 2014, and where my principal role until recently has been to be the lead bishop for education across the country. So, but I rejoice. Much of what I do is seeking to be a person of encouragement to others. And if they say, if you're in the Navy, if you're a rating in the Navy, they say, if it doesn't move, paint it. If it does move, salute it.
Right.
And if you're a bishop, if it doesn't move, dedicate it. And if it does move, bless it.
Well, that sort of dovetails very nicely with the next question I want to ask you, which is about how institutions are founded, often on the basis of grace and generosity of particular individuals. Could you say something about how that selflessness might function in our context today?
I think that we, in spite of what we sometimes read in newspapers about people being very greedy and atomized in our society, it's still the case that there is a huge amount of generosity where people feel that even if their offering is relatively small, it can make a real difference to people's lives. I'm visitor to 3 other colleges in Cambridge, and that's for historical reasons, because predecessors of mine persuaded others to give generously for the foundation of these colleges, primarily as places where you would bring faith and learning together. And of course, you know, the foundation of Robinson in our own age is a sign that generosity and that vision continues. And it's mostly because lots of people who are prepared to be generous, often because they're older people who have been blessed with funds, give generously for a project they may not ever see the completion of, because they believe in the idea of a college and what it will offer to, particularly particularly I suppose to, of course, to young people, and giving them opportunities they would not otherwise have, in terms of learning and critical thinking and preparation for a professional life, but also for those people, many of them themselves, then to engage in public life in the future. But also, people rejoice because they believe that scholarship is important and that the growth of the academy is essential, and they want to see good and godly learning taking place. But I think it is, I mentioned to you about pondering on the second letter of Peter, the first letter of Peter, the second chapter, where St. Peter reflecting on what it's like to be a follower of Jesus. So come to him, the living stone. And I think the idea of our being people, or people who are prepared to have the vision and the generosity to make a difference, can see themselves as, figuratively, as stones adding to other stones that build the whole.
So it's the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, I guess, is part of.
Yeah. So again, we tend to think in the age in which we live that possessive individualism is the only way forward. It's what counts for me. And I have a niece who's in her 20s, and she said, "Uncle Stephen, I want to be famous." And I said, "Well, yes, darling, but what for?" And she said, "Oh, no, I don't worry about the what for. I just want to be famous." And I suppose that this passage is talking about a holy priesthood, a royal nation. It's talking about people in community, that people find their identity in community with other people and in specific places. And I think a college, like Robinson, is a very good paradigm of both an idea and a lived reality of people growing in community around a passion for learning and culture, for research, for scientific discovery, the whole gamut of what a college is for, but fundamentally a community that gathers around tables. Insofar as because of COVID we can, people gathering around tables to eat, tables to study, and the primary table in your chapel where you gather to meet Jesus, the living bread. And it's how all those things, it's that table fellowship all around the different aspects of the college that people want to support.
Yes, which of course is precisely what the struggle is at the moment, as you say, is trying to find ways of making sure that people experience that kind of fellowship.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, isn't it? Because one of the damning things about this virus, apart from it being so clever and changing itself, is that it separates us and it locks us away. It literally has locked us away, and the fact that you found ways to bring people back, even if it's not the experience of being a student that that you and I will have had. Nevertheless, it's saying that these young people are not going to, and the college is not going to be defeated by the virus in doing what it was set up to do, and what your founders and benefactors believed, sufficiently profoundly for you to exist.
Could I finish then by asking you just about your personal history with Robinson? You're familiar with Robinson College as a former student.
Yes, I was. When I was training for the priesthood at Westcott House on Jesus Lane, I was doing the tripos, theology tripos through Selwyn, your fairly near neighbour. But I was sent by my supervisor to have did my church history at Robinson with Peter Newman Brooks, and I have to say that he was. It was really exciting intellectually. There was nothing he didn't. I could never find out anything he didn't know about either the Continental or the English Reformation. And I did try and wrong foot him. It never worked. But also, it was always laughter and wit and fun. I really looked forward to supervisions with him, and I have to say that he was also generous with sherry. So I'd quite often hope to have a 12 o'clock supervision that might end with a glass of something dry. It managed to be both dry and wet at the same time.
And you had to wait until midday.
Absolutely, yes. But of course, I'd have to wait until nearly 1, and he'd say, would you care to join me for a sherry? But that was after he'd worked me really hard for 55 minutes and given my essay perhaps more attention than it deserved.
So working hard and playing hard is a tradition with a long history.
I mean, it's a bit about having a holistic education, isn't it, Simon? That,
of course.
And that, we don't expect our tutors to be our friends. That would be mostly, not desirable. But we do want our teachers to be accessible and people who we can respect and admire as human beings, as well as founts of knowledge and wisdom. And I think that's back to the point about community, because if you're in a community with each other, then you can't write it. It's so much more difficult to objectify one another, because actually you see that person in hall, on a staircase, in the library. It's so much more difficult to caricature people, other than warmly, because you know them in more than one guise. And I think when I first went up to university a very long time ago, as a working class boy going to Oxford, it was college life that very quickly took away my anxiety about a very different environment, because in one sense I was part of a big family.
Well, anxiety, as I'm sure you know, is an increasingly prominent issue that we're struggling with in all our universities at the moment.
Yes, and I think that I pray hard about this, because I think that anxiety, I've experienced it myself, acute anxiety, and I know that how punishing that can be on somebody's mental health and well-being, and you can feel as though this adrenaline rush of anxiety. You feel you want to flee, but there's nowhere you can go. And I think that obviously as a Christian, I have access to to the riches of prayer and worship and study that help to allay that anxiety. And it doesn't mean it's taken away. I think that I think part of the thing about being a Christian is recognizing that God is with us, the incarnate Lord is with us in the environment which we inhabit, and we're not on our own. But it can feel very lonely if one is living with anxiety and, as it were, on the edge of one's seat 24 hours a day is a terrible thing for anybody. But again, it's about how then people can be supported. And that's the thing, I suppose, it's really important about, I don't know how you're doing it in Robinson, but how social bubbles for students, where a small group of students is able to provide mutual care and support and tender words, as well as laughter and maybe some improving cooking.
I think the workload on our staff and fellows here is enormous at the moment, but what's very impressive is the way that the students are constantly using a trial and error approach to making sure that they're mutually supported amongst themselves. It's very impressive.
I think that's, and it just shows that when we sometimes, there's a temptation amongst, certainly amongst old people like me, to because we don't necessarily meet lots of very young people in their late teens and early 20s, to denigrate them, when in fact these young people are people of integrity and purpose, and although they may be finding their way and, like all of us, make mistakes, they want to be good. And I think that and to just be encouraging and honouring that amongst the young, as you've just done, seems to me to be a very important thing to keep doing, because young people are like the rest of us, making their way in the world and trusting that relationships will come to fruition, and that ideas will bear fruit, and that they will be they'll want to be productive citizens and neighbours whom old people like me will be relying on in the future for my well-being.
Well, Bishop Stephen, a very big thank you from all of us here for commending to us a Christian model of togetherness that is seriously, socially, politically, economically engaged. Thank you very much.
It's a great joy. Thank you, Simon, and bless all of you at Robinson.
the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace.